I have seen many companies that are highly profitable and have high sales that have little to no value that they can't sell for or they can't transition. I have yet to see a company that is high in value that does not have best in class profit or best in class sales.
Hello, everyone. Chris G here again, A Titan's Tale. And yes, it's been 7 days since the last one, but today I got a special guest, Justin Goodbread. Now, Justin, he's an author, business owner, and as a matter of fact, he's owned so many businesses that he's going to talk about how he sold them and got rid of them. Not necessarily got rid of them, but passed them on to a new. See, he's laughing. All right, I know. You did get rid of them technically, but you turned them over to somebody else who will nurture them and cherish them all the way from Knoxville, Tennessee. And if you didn't know, Tennessee and Missouri, where I'm located, is the only two states in the union that are connected with 8 other states. So technically, you're my neighbor. So, all right, please welcome Justin.
Hey, Chris, glad to be here, man. Looking forward to this conversation, how we can impact your audience, man.
Awesome. Tell us a little about yourself, if you would, before we get started.
Well, being here in Tennessee, you would know that I'm probably a country boy at heart, right? Born and raised in the swamps of South Georgia, just a little bit south of Savannah, Georgia, a little bit north of Jacksonville, Florida, right on the ocean.
Oh,
Born and
yeah.
raised down there, was homeschooled my whole life just about, and started my first business when I was down there at the age of 15. Sold it when I was 21 and moved to Tennessee where my wife's from. And so we've been here in Tennessee now since my early 20s. And even though I'm in orange country, even though we had the Volunteers that sing this crazy song called Rocky Top, I still am a Bulldog. I still cheer for my Georgia Bulldogs and bark like when they kick off. Other than that, man, I'm a business owner. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. And I think all around just a guy that just enjoys life.
Nice. So we're going to talk about, and today we're going to focus mainly on exiting strategies and so forth, and then your expertise there. But when should a business owner start thinking about exit strategies? Before they start the business?
Yeah, the day they launch the business, even before you start your business, because ultimately, what is the business for? Many times we'll say it's there to create freedom. Hey, I'm going to start a business so I can be free. I don't have to behold to the man, right? Or it could be, you know what? I can make more money doing this myself. I can create this lifestyle that I desire. Ultimately, though, a business is there to generate wealth. That's all it's there for. It's to generate wealth. Now, in that, we find out that we're passionate about our business if we can serve those people to whom our clients or customers, whatever you may call them, and we love it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we generate wealth. And most business owners don't truly see wealth until they exit. And what's sad is in the United States right now, there are 11 million businesses that are going to try to sell over the next six years, roughly. And out of those 11 million businesses that are going to try to sell, only 1 million of them will sell. Here's where the number gets crazy. 4% of those business owners, of those who sell, will be happy with the exit. So roughly 40,000 people will be happy with their exit. In other words, the amount of money they got, how the buyer perceived it, how their customers, which ultimately are their friends, were treated in the process. And so to me, if you're going to be in business, it's about generating wealth. Number one, it's about doing good work, obviously, for our customers. We get that. I mean, that goes without saying, I think. But at the end of the day, it's how are we going to generate wealth for ourselves, for the people that we employ, for our communities, for the charities that we support? How are we going to generate wealth, take dollars, and help impact them? And so exit planning begins the day you start the business, and often I'll say before you start the business.
You've done this 7 times, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Maybe even more, but now. What kept you going? I mean, why start another one? I mean, was it just youth or boredom, or you saw a different opportunity?
Yeah, I think at each startup or at each business venture, there was a reason at that time. And so I walked through the progression. At the age of 15 is when I started my landscape company. And it was at that point, my mom and dad were teaching my brother and myself, my sister, how to be entrepreneurs. We were raised to be entrepreneurs. And so we started this little landscape company that ultimately we sold when I was 21 years old. The reason why I sold it, I love the career, love the path, love the people, love the clients. But my wife is from Tennessee. I was in South Georgia. My wife is Filipino by culture with her family. And we were dealing with some things that I never experienced before in a small town America. And so we sold the company so that we could do a fresh start just after we got married. So there was a reason for that, right? So then we get into the second business, which is insurance-based financial planning. And at that time, I was learning how to use insurance to help people with their futures. Well, that changed over time. That world changed dramatically from 25 years ago to today. And so I sold that business. Now, in the process, I learned consulting. Remember, I'd already sold 2 businesses at this point, so I love consulting business owners. I knew how to grow business. So I started a consulting business helping dentists called dental management company, where we would help dentists buy practices fresh out of school, out of residency. They would buy these practices. I would help them with the financing, the marketing, restructuring the practice, taking their practice from where they're broke, literally, to now receiving high income. Well, laws changed, things changed. My passion dwindled, so I sold that company. Ultimately came into a business that was where my passion is and is to this day. And I started a true financial planning firm with the SEC, registered with the SEC, called Heritage Investors. I started another company called Heritage Business Advisors and a third company called Financially Simple. They work together as a triune to reach business owners, show them that, hey, you can double your net worth in 18 to 36 months. And the 3 of them were clicking, hit all sorts of awards nationally. It was listed 5 times as a top 100 most influential advisor in the United States, received Exit Planner of the Year, was inducted into the Exit Planning Hall of Fame, the youngest person ever, wrote 2 books. One was #1 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. Another one reached international bestseller, having a time. And Chris, during COVID, my wife got sick. And we're sitting in the hospital facing this challenge that I couldn't control. For the first time ever, I found myself this business owner who could grab the bull by the horns and wrestle him to the ground, right? I found myself in a position where I couldn't help. And I'm sitting in the hospital. My wife makes a statement. This is not me beating my chest. This is me being authentic. She looks at me and she says, Justin, what's another $1 million going to do for us? It's not going to change anything. We don't live that style of life. We live on a small farm here in East Tennessee, a couple hundred acres. We, drive used vehicles. We travel a little bit, but we're just simple down home folk, right? Just an old country boy still to this day. And in that moment, my business coach, which had pushed me to be the best I could be, I made that statement to him. And he said, son, it's now time for you to sell your business. And I said, why, coach? He said, because your heart's not going to be in it anymore. And if your heart's not in it, then you're not going to do your very best to serve the people that God's put in front of you for you to serve. And therefore, now you need to look at some opportunities. Chris, at that point, I didn't even think about selling my company, but my company sold for best in class multiple. In other words, the value that I received was ludicrous compared to what many people in my industry would receive. It was if I had a stock in this mouse company here, whatever this company may be, and the stock was 4 times the value it was listed on the exchange, right? Well, you would sell that asset every day of the week. And so I did. I sold that asset back in December 2021. And the company who acquired me said, hey, Goodbread, you know how to scale companies. You know how to take a business owner and show them how to drastically drive the value. Would you serve as the president of our company? Well, I've never been in that role before. I've never served on a huge national-based company. I've never worked with hundreds of employees, stepped into that role, and within 18 months, took that company from not being able to get capitalized, from not being able to get financing, from running into very hard times financially, to now a 9-figure potential exit in December of last year. So here I am now exiting 7 companies, 6 of which I started, 1 of which I was placed as a chief shareholder and at an executive position, and watched all this success. And I sit back, Chris, over Christmas this last year, and I'm going, if I have a calling on my life, if there is such a thing, and I believe there is, I think each of us are created for something that only uniquely we can do. I believe that with all my heart. So if I have a calling in my life, it is, how can I impact business owners to show them that this wealth generation machine that they jumped into to create freedom, or to create a different path for their future financially, or create a way that they can impact the community that they serve in. How can I teach them that they can take this machine and remodel it slightly and reach every one of the desires that they have within a very short period of time? We're talking 18 to 36 months. And so now Birth Financially Simple, the version 2.0, where now I'm having a wonderful time enjoying this, coaching and teaching business owners that, hey, this journey of business ownership is a pleasure. It's not a drag. And you can drastically change your life for the rest of your life if you know the roadmap. So I think each one of these journeys, Chris, have been out of timing. Each of them have been out of diligence and thought. Each of them have been out of circumstances. But man, it's been a fun journey. I don't regret any of the changes or any of the transitions I've had.
You actually want to ask one of the questions. I actually asked how did you decide on your next venture, but basically just opportunities arose, right? And you had to
Yeah,
make a decision.
I think I can answer it in that way, that it was opportunities, but I also think it's, the longer we're in the seat of a business owner, or the longer we
Mhm.
live this life that we live in, the more obstacles, the more choices have been closed by decisions that we've made in the past. And so here I am now in my mid 40s saying, you know what? I know what I'm uniquely gifted at. And I don't have to chase every rabbit I see, even though I see a lot of rabbits I can chase. I don't have to chase every rabbit I see. Instead, I'm going to chase the one that I know is going to be the most pleasurable for me and that's going to give me the greatest impact. That's my word, is how can I impact people, right? To let them experience what I've experienced. Right. So to me, it's about living this life to the fullest possible. And at the end of the day, Chris, whenever I'm laying on my deathbed, which hope is years and years from now, I realize I'm going to be surrounded, hopefully, by my children, by a few handful of friends, and ultimately, I'm going to probably meet my mom and daddy in heaven at some point. Then I want them to say, "Son, you left it all on the field. You did everything you knew how to do, and there were no regrets." I want to be able to look at my kids, man, when I'm at that point in life and say, "Kids, your daddy lived a fulfilled life. He did everything he could do to take the gifts that I had been given and to pour them in the lives of others." That's what I'm after, brother.
You mentioned employees, and I have had employees. When you sell, do you put in protections for them, or is it just how's that work? Or you're helping other companies sell. What kind of does that even come up as an option?
Yeah, it comes up as an option. So let's walk it through a time frame on this employee concept through a transition. One of the first things the business owner is going to have to deal with is, when do they tell their employees, even their inner circle employees, which we all typically have, and then we
Sure.
have the outer circle employees. When do they start telling them this idea that, hey, I want to make a transition? I either want to sell to an internal person, a child, an outside person, a big national firm. They have to first decide when they're going to tell their team. And there's pros and cons to the timing of that. We actually teach this through our exit planning strategies, because we want to teach people this years before they actually have to make that decision so they can understand it. But ultimately, whenever that time comes and you start talking to your team is going to be looking at it with fear. Always happens. Always happens. Change scares everybody, including you and me to some
Sure.
extent, right? It's
I
scary.
mean, you don't know. I mean,
You don't
what could happen? Yeah.
Right. So the job for us as owners, if we're in that seat talking to our team, is to have as many of the questions we need to answer for them prepared. So many times it may be, look, you're not going to have a position going forward. I had, whenever I sold my 3 companies back in 2021, half of my team did not have positions going forward. So what did I do? I took care of them. I gave them an unbelievable severance. I put them in a position to help them find new jobs. Right. So that's one position that you may have. You're probably not going to have all your team members there after the sale. Then you're going to have team members who are going to be there that are key to perhaps the earnout or retention bonuses, things of that nature that'll be inside the definitive documents or the closing documents. And so in those individuals, you're going to have some parachutes in place, which basically means that if they land in the new company, that they're landing softly, that they have a good job they can step into, that they have a compensation package that's typically a step up to make them go through the stress, or you're going to may also have to have some handcuffs. And what I mean by that is not in a negative way. Sometimes you're going to need a couple of those key stakeholders to fulfill their duties in this new position, this new company, for a period of time. So for example, whenever I sold my financial planning practice, I had 2 key stakeholders that I had to have. If they left, it would hurt my earnout or it hurt my retention bonuses, right? So what I did is I put together a package for them that said, hey, if you stick with me for this period of time here, your compensation is going to be this, and I'm going to do this on top of it, right? So it made it to where, like a spoonful of sugar helps medicine go down. It made it where I gave a little bit of honey to them. It wasn't perfect, but at the end of the day, they could honestly sit back and say, you know what? My leader, Goodbread here, Justin, he told us what we were going to experience. He did everything in his power to make sure we were taken care of. And at the end of the day, I learned a lot. It was a great journey. And here I am. And now those 2 individuals are excelling because I did them right. So I think, Chris, if we're going through this exit strategy with our team members, we've served them for years. Many of us as business owners, we've served them for years. We lay awake at night as business owners wondering, how am I going to answer this particular question or this particular problem, knowing that it can have a direct impact on our employees? Knowing, hey, if we make the wrong decision here, we may end up having to terminate somebody, and I have to pay their house payment, I have to pay their car payment, their kids are in school. That's not what we want to do to our beloveds. So the way I look at it is lay it all on the table. A good coach and exit planner can walk you through the strategies, can walk you through the options, and then let them pull the emotions of, man, this is my key player. I've been with him for 25 years. I don't want to harm him. Let them help you with that emotion so that you're doing what is best for them at the same time, what is best for you, the owner.
What kind of time we're looking at? What's the average? Or is there an average? Or is it just plan on being a year? Or is it something quick? It depends on the niche, I guess.
Yeah, it depends on the type of business that you're trying to exit. Depends on the style in which you're going to exit. So, for example, there are many businesses that you could exit, and they want the buyer and the bank wants you out within 90 days. Not uncommon. That happens frequently. Other times, there are relational style businesses that require the proprietor or key employees or stakeholders to remain engaged for a period of a year, 2, 3, 4, 5. Depending on the nature of the business.
On a consulting type of, is that?
It could be a consulting basis. It could be an employee basis. It could be a retainer basis. They may even have you in a position to where you don't show up, but yet you're on non-compete for a period of time, right? To where that, hey, you can't do anything because it's such a relational business. We may not want you here on the job, but we're going to pay you to do nothing for the next 36 months. It depends on the type of business and the niche of the business and what exactly the buyer and the seller are coming to during that negotiation.
What's your opinion or status on brokers, business brokers? You
So
use them, you recommend them?
There are two different types of brokers. You have the M&A advisors, which typically deal with the middle market. Middle market is typically when you have revenue in excess of $10 million. And then you have the business broker world, which is typically for the small business owner, mom and pops that basically make up our backbone of the society. So today there's 31 million small businesses which employ people. Most of those small businesses under $10 million of revenue will use a business broker. Now, when you use if you use a business broker, there are several types of methods they could use. I prefer to have the auction style business broker. In other words, they're going to learn your business. They're going to look at your business and they know what the buyer avatar would be. You and the business broker are going to be talking through that. Hey, I don't want to work with some national venture capital firm because they're cutthroat or whatever the term is. I've heard all sorts of excuses on that. Or, you know what? I don't want to sell to my kids, or I do want to sell to my kids. So in each one of these avenues, the business broker is there to listen, and they're there to position the business so that it is attractive to that targeted buyer, right? In that attractiveness, the process that I love as a blanket, I can say this now, there's nuances, but I love it when they're going to put an auction in place to where they say, hey, we believe the business is worth this based on these valuation, based on these data points, but we want to see who's going to offer us the best price and what the details are. I like that approach. I like using a business broker for that approach. I do caution my clients not to try to sell it themselves. Here's why. You're going to probably sell your business one time in your career. It is the most stressful thing you're ever going to go through in your life. It is ridiculously stressful. And you do not know, as the owner of the business who's operated this thing, is built to be very successful, you do not know the game in such a way that the opposing party does, and they're going to lead you right into pitfalls. Pitfalls like a retake, common. We don't probably have time to go through that, but a retake is one of those pitfalls, and there's dozens. So you as the owner, employ the professionals. It's going to cost you some money, but you're going to make more money net when you hire the professionals, when you hire the advisors, the exit planners, the brokers, the CPAs, the attorneys, the insurance agents, the bankers, and everybody you need on this team to transition your business from one hand to another.
Let's go back to 2020. Your wife's ill, right? You all had this heart to heart. And she goes, yeah, what's another million going to be? And you go to your coach, your mentor. Was that an easy conversation?
At that point, yes, it was with my coach. So let me back. Yes, it was at that point, but the conversation was easy. Following the advice was hard. So whenever I launched my company in 2017, I walked away from $250,000 recurring revenue to start this business from scratch on this dream that, hey, I can take a business from zero my goal was $5 million within 6 years. That was my goal. I can take this business from here to $5 million in 6 years. And I sit down with my coach at his pool in the city, and we're talking. He says, Goodbread, you're going to be able to do that within 3 years, 5 million within 3 years. But you need to hire a coach, you need to hire me, and you need to pay me. And he said, you need to pay me 10 grand a month. And I'm like, you lost your mind. And I was pledging my family $60,000 a year is all we were going to live off of. So I'd already cut the thing back. So I knew if I could delay gratification on the income, then I could reach the value. Right. So I'm like, you've lost your ever love of mine. I said, why do I need to pay you? And he said this thing 3 times, Chris. He goes, Justin, you need to pay me. You need to pay me. You need to pay me. And I'm like, why do I need to pay you? He goes, because you're too daggum smart for your own good. He goes, you know too much, as many of us as business owners do. We're not dumb. We are sharp cookies, right?
Right.
So he's like, the problem is that you're too smart, and you're going to run into this problem that have you ever heard the Caltron girls? Here in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and East Tennessee is where the Manhattan Project took place. And these PhDs who are designing these knobs so they can measure the outputs as they're building the atomic bomb, they hired high school girls to come in and monitor these knobs. And what the PhDs did is they wrote guidelines for these girls to follow. The girls followed the guidelines to a T. And their reports were better than the PhDs, because the PhDs would get in there as they were looking at the knobs, they wouldn't follow their own advice, and they begin adjusting and playing and tinkering and doing those things that we as business owners do. And the result was the PhDs actually had a worse output than these high school girls who didn't have the knowledge. Same is true for us as business owners. So my coach in that moment, he said, Goodbread, you need to hire me because you're too daggum smart, man. You know too much. You're not going to listen to your inner person. You need somebody who's going to say no. You need somebody you respect, and you need to pay them a lot of money, because when you pay them a lot of money, you're going to respect their opinion. Now, I leaned into that versus doing like many of us do. We walk away trying to pinch pennies, right? Tripping over dollars, chasing pennies is what I often say that we do, especially with coaches. And by the time that conversation with my wife happened, Chris, very emotional. Literally, I'm looking like my wife. She had a 12% of survival rate on this particular issue she was dealing with. I thought my wife was gone, my best friend of my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm leaning to my coach, and he says, you need to sell this thing. And at that point, I'm like, but I see the trajectory. I see my future. I'm 42 years old at the time. What am I going to do? And then I had this conversation with him, Chris, about being a failure. And I said, Coach, people are going to look at me like I had to sell it. And he said, Goodbread, that's not the case, man. How many people in their 40s have money and time? How many people want that? He goes, I promise you, man, if you have money and time, in other words, you have the resources from the sale and you have the time because of your youth, theoretically, we don't know what tomorrow's going to hold, but theoretically because of my youth, he goes, dude, you're not going to have a problem. You're not going to have a problem finding that passion, that niche. You're going to be able to get the shackles away from you and journey. So whenever he had that conversation with me, Chris, I went back to my wife who was dealing with the recovery phase at this point. And I said, baby, I think we're going to sell this. Went to my broker, and he told me the price. I was like, okay, no problem. Yeah, now I've got the money and time, circumstance. And then my coach said, Justin, you're my last client. I'm done. I've watched this. You took a business from startup to 49 months later for an 8-figure exit. That is unheard of. Now go out and teach others, right? So
You be the mentor now.
Yeah, go out and do what you know. You can lead the people to where you've been. You can lead somebody where you've been. I'm going elk hunting in a couple of weeks, my son, right? I can't wait for that. And I have an experienced guide who knows the mountain range, who I can follow because he's been there, done that. He knows it like the back of his hand. Now, as a business coach, I can come behind and say, look, I've been there, done that 7 times, had the awards. And it's so much fun being able to show business owners how they can walk this journey. And hopefully they have time and money at their ability so they can impact.
Money's good and the cash, but what do you do with it? And here's what I mean. Do you put it in the bank? Do you reinvest it? Do you buy another company? Robert Kiyosaki, the rich dad, poor dad guy, kept the 4 quadrants.
Yep.
And you're now here as the business owner. Now you've sold. And in theory, you're going to the investor stage.
Yep.
What do you do with it? Or who do you contact, or what happens?
Yeah, there's actually a bigger problem. And I'm going to answer your question, but there's a bigger underlying problem. That is this. Many times we as business owners, we don't look at our companies as an asset. We look at the income that we take out through our distributions, our payroll, even the money that we bury with our CPA's guidance into the company. For example, we pay for our cell phones in the company, we pay for our cars, we pay for trips, continuing education, whatever it may be that your tax advisor allows you to do. And so when we look at this, we know we're making X number of dollars. So let's say hypothetically, just using round numbers, just for example, this is no one numbers, these are not my own numbers, but let's say hypothetically you were able to secure $10 million of assets. And now in that business, you may get a 25% distribution effect from that business and with all those different things inside of it. But now all of a sudden, when you've come out, you look at banks and you may get 3, 4, 5% yield on that money. You look at other opportunities which don't necessarily reflect the same opportunities of advancement in your net worth as when you're holding that one position. So what we'll work on exit planning along with the exit planning team is positioning that individual so they can not only have freedom of time, but also take those dollars and position them so that they're now being deployed for them to accomplish what they desire. So for me, what did we do? One of our things for us is written near and dear is charities. We have missions that we support. We have orphanages that we support. We just visited one in the Dominican Republic a couple of weeks ago that we support that brings girls in out of the sex trades and helps them. I mean, that's a passion that we as a family had even before we sold, right? I have a passion now I invest in real estate. I've done that for years. I invest in businesses. I invest in securities. I invest in so many different things. What is interesting is business owners, if they have the proper guidance, I can tell you this year, this is again, not me being my chest, Chris, reality. I can tell you this year, my net worth grew in the first 6 months of this year than it did the previous 4 years combined. Because of knowing how to now, I have cash at a level I've never had before. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands where you run down to your local guy or gal and they put it into this, that, and the other. We're talking about serious cash that now you're able to participate in things that you never dreamt you can participate in. And with the proper team, the proper guidance, advisors, such like myself, can guide you to show you, hey, you're not necessarily going to get the same 25, 30, 40% return that you have in the business, but you're also not going to have that concentration risk and you're not going to have the stress. And you're able to diversify and live a life of freedom. So there's a lot of opportunity for those who take this journey.
Well, what would be the reasons? And I don't say exit because exit is important. I guess there's two ways to exit. You can exit completely, or you could exit the company and let somebody else run it for you and still generate the cash. What would be some of the reasons not to still own the business versus and be free still? Versus, you follow my question?
I am. I'm going to rephrase your question, then I'm going to answer my question because I think I know where you go. Why would some people sell whenever they could theoretically build a company that they could own and basically have the golden goose?
Yes.
Okay. The reality is that through value acceleration, by learning how to grow the value of your company, you build a business that is a golden goose. One of the number one drivers of a business that drives value is decentralizing the owner from the epicenter of the business. One of the number one drivers. There are 8 drivers to drive value in a company. One of the number one ones is decentralizing the owner. What I often see is whenever a business owner takes their eyes off of profits, that's going to sound kind of crazy when I first say this. When they take their eyes off the sales and off the profits and focus on value, they end up ultimately building that golden goose. And now they have an option. They have an option to say, do I want to exit and change my life to destination? Or do I want to have this asset that's just for spinning me off a dividend that I don't have to think about much, right? The option, the key word there is option, right? We want the option. Most business owners don't have that option. They're now become beholden, captivated by this Frankenstein type of business that's holding them away from where they want to be. So the danger is this, Chris, and that's why I'm going to come back to that statement. Whenever we as business owners focus on profits, so common, or sales, the amount of revenue we can generate, what we end up doing is keeping our company specific risk, which is a technical term, basically means what is the company's risk that company is facing that's keeping the value pent up, right? Whenever we focus on profit or value, we don't deal with company specific risk. Here's what I can definitively say. I have seen many companies that are highly profitable and have high sales that have little to no value that they can't sell for or they can't transition. I have yet to see a company that is high in value that does not have best-in-class profit or best-in-class sales. So when the owner focuses on the value, the thing that business is there for, the profit and the sales follow. And by focusing on that value, now they're creating themselves an option of, do I want to just maintain this golden goose and collect dividends? Or do I want to sell and radically change my life and do something I've never dreamt of doing before? I want to see the business owners have that option. And some of the clients that I coach, some of my one-on-one private clients, these are the people that like want to drive it to the extent that, I mean, they're paying some serious money, but they're getting serious results, right? Or my mastermind groups, the ones who are just a small group of clients that we meet on a weekly basis, right? Those type of individuals, they're like, dude, I want to have the option to be able to exit or not. And by focusing on the things which I value, Chris, they ultimately can make that decision. Many business owners never get to make that decision.
I know there's strategies to exits, and I don't really necessarily get into those, but I've seen where companies come in and they buy another company, and then they just cut personnel, they cut inventory, they cut all that good stuff to make the income statement look really well, look really good. And then, 2 or 3 years, and you know what they're doing. At least I do. I can see it. And I told my brother went through this. I told my mom, I said, this is what's going to happen. This company just bought his company, the one he was working for. And he's very frustrated. He's a manager. And this is what's happening. I said, watch about 3 years from now, they're going to resell. Well, we're not talking about that. Well, how do you protect yourself from, maybe it's not important to you. I mean, they're buying companies, I guess, at a discount because they know it's not being run properly too. So,
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to unpack this. I'm going to unpack that last statement first, and I'll work back to your first point.
sure.
The reality is that there are gurus right now on the interweb that you can look on social media, YouTube, Facebook, wherever, Instagram, that are talking about how poorly companies are ran today. And they're correct. I theoretically, Chris, I have no doubt, I could go out and buy a business, pick whatever price point, and I know I could double that business value within 18 to 36 months because most of the business owners don't know what it takes to drive value. Okay. And so what's sad to me is that there's this shark tank, if you will, out there of people with cash that aren't looking at your employees, your customers, your community, the charities that you support. They don't give a flying flip about that. Okay. What they care about is, I want to buy this business. I'm going to turn it within 2-3 years and I'm going to double my money. Okay. What's sad to me is many business owners put themselves in a position where that's the only option they have because they're willing to pay dollars for you. And they see how bad your business is. They see your baby's ugly. Is my second book, Your Baby's Ugly, right? They see how ugly your baby is, and you can't do anything because you didn't take the time as a business owner to build it in a position to where ultimately you had options. So there are those companies out there for business owners who do not invest and do not build their business where they're attractive. On the opposite side, there are those companies that do buy businesses, purge them, integrate them into a mothership, and then sell them. Typically, you'll see that in the venture capital world, the angel world, the family office world. But as a business owner, if you know that's out there and that is distasteful to you, as it is for so many of us, especially those of us who have borne this company in our small towns on our back, who we share, we show the scars on our arms and our hands, right? We bleed it. Those of us who have that passion, you're not going to have many options going forward unless you go in and start building the positions today. And that's where those horror stories come into play. So if that's a concern, man, I don't want to see my baby cut up into many pieces. All right. There's an old Hebrew word that says Selah. Just take a break. Time out. Time out. Let's drink a little bit of water and some Powerade on the side of the game here. And let's get somebody in your company to take it and create options for you. And if they do that, man, business becomes fun again.
Is that what your book covers?
So I've written 2 books. My first one is called The Ultimate Sell, and it walks through, it's a little outdated. In fact, my team said, Justin, you need to update this thing. I've read it probably 7 years ago. So it tells you how much time flies. But on that one, it was, hey, here's kind of the typical sales process that a business owner goes through as a whole. And there's nuances, but I tried to cover that. And it's designed, it's like 58 chapters long. Each chapter you can read. Like it's not like you have to read it in sequence. You read it like, hey, I'm right here at this page, forget all the rest, and here's where I'm going, right?
Kind of like a workbook almost.
Yeah, it's kind of a workbook. It ended up selling more units in China, believe it or not, than it did in the United States, which I thought was intriguing. They actually put it in one of their universities as a guidebook, as a textbook, which was interesting to me. My second book is Your Baby's Ugly. Your Baby's Ugly. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to grab the business owner figuratively, like my dad did so many times to me. He would grab me by my shoulders and he would shake me and says, listen to me, son. You're making a bad decision here. And I'm glad he did that, right? Because it shook some common sense into me. But the book is written in such a way to say, look, your business, this thing that you love, that you dream about at night, that you live and breathe 80 plus hours a week, that you are the Mac Daddy Grand Poobah in your town. Everybody knows you as this type of owner. There's going to come a day very soon when someone's going to come in and say that business is a piece of junk. It's ugly. And unless you make these improvements in your company, we're not talking about scaling. We're not talking about chasing profits. We're not talking about any of these things. Unless you make these improvements, your business is not going to create for you what you thought it was going to create. In fact, it's going to be your worst nightmare, and you'll be lucky if you find yourself in that 4% of business owners who change their life for the rest of their life, or who don't end up regretting the very day they went into business. That's what that book's about.
I think this almost ties back to my next question, because earlier I wrote down my notes here. Earlier you said value. You had to create value. And sometimes when I hear that as a marketing person or whatever, I'm thinking value to the client. I'm guessing your word value is a little different. Can you give me the definition of your value that you're referring to?
Sure. So most business owners have a net worth statement. Perhaps you have a house, a car, a tractor, a four-wheeler like me, right? Maybe it's a grand piano. I have a grand piano that I love, right? So I have these assets that if I look on my net worth statement, I see all the things that I own, 401ks, pension plans, whatever it may be. And then I have liabilities, things that I owe. Maybe it's a debt on my house. Maybe it's a mortgage. Maybe it's a student loan, whatever it may be, assets and liabilities. And I'm sorry to be so elementary, but I found that it's best to be super simple here, okay? The reality is that your business is an asset. There is something in it that's valuable. It may be intellectual property. It may be the name of the business. It could be the processes within the business. It may be the customer list. There's a value there. And most of the time, statistically speaking, most of the time that business comprises of 80% of your net worth. It's highly illiquid. You can't see it. You can't touch it. All you can see is the income, but there's a value there that is on your financial statement. Now, if you go put on the bank to the bank, they're going to discount it because they know it's highly illiquid. But the reality is, if there's a value there, and if we could understand this business is worth theoretically $1 million, but we can move it to $3 million in value with a couple of simple moves, then whenever I'm talking about let's create value, it's about let's moving that business to where it becomes even greater in your balance sheet, so that now whenever someone looks at it, they say, I want to buy that and pay you that. So the value is created a couple of different ways. I'm going to keep this simple just for as an education standpoint. I love teaching this. Most people will say my business produces $100,000, use that as an example, $100,000 of pick a number, EBITDA, EBIT, NOI, profit, gross revenue, whatever the number is, whatever you in your world or your particular vernacular is. So let's say it's $100,000. Typically for small businesses, there's a multiple ascribed to that $100,000. So they might say our business has a multiple of 3, or Charlie Brown down the road sold his business for 5X. 5X what? Okay, let's say it's 5 times 100,000, which is a $500,000 value. Easy number to understand. The reality is that when we get closer to retirement, or we get closer to now taking this game of business seriously, we want to drive our sales up. We want to see our 100,000 go from 100 to 200,000. What it does is increase company specific risk, which causes our business to be less valuable. So let's say hypothetically, here's how this works. Let's say hypothetically that we're at 500,000. Let's use 100 because I do that in my head. Let's say hypothetically we're at $100,000 in value and our multiple is 2. So we have a $200,000 value. Now we want to go out and double our income. We went from 100,000 to 200,000, but the multiple is still 2. We have a $400,000 valuation. We doubled our value, but we also just doubled our throughput. We also just doubled our stress. We also just doubled our systems. We also just doubled our complexity, right? Instead of focusing on the revenue, let's focus on the multiple. So let's say we're back to $100,000 in revenue, or EBITDA, or whatever the number is.
Yeah.
Let's double our multiple from 2 to 4. All we're going to do is build the things in the system that makes it best in class. We still get the same $400,000 valuation without having to work twice as hard, without having to take on twice the stress.
So there are
Right?
things that we can do to increase our multiplier, versus our company type thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's 8 key segments of your business, and there's 8 drivers of business, right? There's things that if you understand the game and how to unlock the multiple, you don't have to work that much harder. You got to get more succinct. You got to increase what's called throughput within the company. And if you do it properly, here's what happens, Chris. Here's the magic. I've seen this myself, and I worked hundreds of business owners through this. As you increase the multiple, the revenue is going to increase. You may not have to double your revenue. You may go from 100,000 to 150,000 revenue, and you may not have to double your multiple. You may go from 2 to 3. Look at what just happened. Whereas before we were doubling our revenue or we were doubling our multiple and we were getting to $400,000 value, now we're just giving ourselves a 50% increase on both of them. And now we're at 150 times 3 is 450,000. We had more value without having to work as hard or without having to focus on certain systems. That's what happens in business.
Well, if you're willing, I see another episode coming on about strategies, but we're running out of time. I got one last question for you. I know, at least from my notes here, that you focus mainly on service-oriented companies, right?
Correct.
Is it harder to sell a service versus a brick and mortar versus a digital company?
Okay. So let's dissect the three segments of the marketplace. There's three segments as I see them through my lens: is services one, manufacturing, or retail. Three different areas, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So manufacturing has its own nuances. I am not an expert there. There are many people that run around Belt, Six Sigma, things of that nature, lean processes that are very good at manufacturing. That's not my skill set. And retail is another one that I just don't understand, don't care to know. Right. So a bookstore, for example, a pizza franchise who's selling some sort of a widget. Right. I'm just not a retail guy. Service businesses means that, to me, and the way I would describe it, is we have a product or a service that we want to sell, but our name is behind it. Right. We're going to sell you this, but then we're going to service it. So that may be, I mean, it may be the blue collars of the world, maybe a dentist, the attorney, the chiropractor, the tire repair guy, the HVAC person, the landscaper, the tractor, whatever it may be. You're providing a service to somebody. I love service because it's simple. And more importantly, most business owners who own service companies have their name attached to it, and they have a pride that I admire. Because if they give you their word, Chris, you know this, man. If a business owner is a service company, if they shake your hand, look you in the eyes, man to man, they say, you're going to have this by Friday, you're going to have it by Friday, unless something drastically happened, because their name is attached to it, right? Mm-hmm. Different than retail, different than manufacturing. And I'm not saying those are not in that avenue, it's just a different flavor. So is it easier to sell a service business than a manufacturing business? Potentially, if it's built properly. Where the danger becomes in is if you, the business owner, hear me loud and clear, there's nothing else you get this. If you're the business owner or at the epicenter of your business, you do not have a business, you have a job, and you're not going to be able to sell it. Period. Why have all these systems and processes? Here, you're not selling it, at least not for premium dollars, and probably at a discount. So this cool thing about a service business is I've yet to see one that I can't systematically over a 12, 18, 36-month period of time, walk the business owner away from the epicenter of the business and make that business significantly higher now where it's super attractive to an outside buyer, or it's now providing that dividend to that business owner without them having to stress about it day in, day out.
And that's Justin Goodbread. And I won't spell it because I might say it, but it's Goodbread. And we got to talking about maybe having some bakery, but that's German, German stuff. But Justin, how would people get hold of you if that's something that interests them, that they need to talk to you?
Absolutely. So I'm on all social media channels. Instagram is where I play. We put a lot of stuff out on Instagram. Tag me there. You can see my life. You can see a little bit about me. We have a YouTube channel that we teach these concepts in detail. I try to teach specifically to business owners. I have a podcast. It's fun to talk on, but go to justingoodbread.com. You can see our offers. You see my courses. I have DIY courses. I have 12-week extensive courses. I have masterminds, even one-on-one coaching, which is reserved for only the business owners who are like, dude, let's go. Let's roll this thing out. So they can find a little bit about me on justingoodbread.com.
Thank you. As always, you can also go to titanstail.com. It goes to our directory page, and you can find Justin's information and as well all our other guests. And then something new we've just started, we want to actually reach out and talk to our listeners. So you can reach me, Chris Gilman, at Chris Gilman on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. All right. Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, brother.
All right. You have a good day.